In China, fairy tales don't end with happily ever after. They end with an obituary. Hey friends, let me ask you something. If you max out 6 credit cards to buy a Ferrari and then realize you live on a dirt road, did you just upgrade your life or just your problems? That is China's high-speed rail story. A decade ago, it was China's crown jewel, the shiny backdrop for every China is rising post. Trains slicing through mountains, bridges bending across valleys, tracks to prosperity, they said. But fast forward to today, those rails don't lead to prosperity. They lead straight into weeds, ghost towns, and dead graves. Here's the core truth. China's HSR was never primarily an economic solution. It was a political symbol. Speed over sense, scale over sustainability, headlines over balance sheets. Local officials needed trophies. Beijing needed propaganda. Banks needed to lend. Meanwhile, third and fourth tier cities were told, build it and growth will come. Spoiler, growth did not come. Enormous debt arrived. Today, you've got stations overgrown like urban ruins. Taxi stands abandoned. Bus lines cut. The shops outside closed. Housing prices cut in half. 17 small cities already had their shiny, high-speed dreams curtailed, suspended, or shut down just in the first half of this year. That is not progress. That is the fast track to bankruptcy. Take Ningxia of the Gansu province. They cut the ribbon in late 2024. Brand new station. 20 billion yuan sunk in. Less than a year later, service suspended. Reason? Lack of passengers. And you mean to tell me no one thought to check demand before spending billions? What is next? Building an Olympic pool in the desert and then being shocked it's empty? And it's not just Ningxia. 四川宜宾、安徽阜阳、贵州盘州、河南濮阳, all hyped as transportation hubs that would change destiny. Now they're so quiet, you can literally hear the wind whistle through empty ticket halls. Local governments bulldozed farmland, flattened old towns, and built new districts. Provincial subcenter in 3 years, GDP double in 5. The result? The train came, the people didn't. Platforms stayed empty. Ticket offices had no lines. Why? Because tickets are too expensive for locals earning only 3,000 yuan a month. For them, high-speed rail isn't transportation. It's still a luxury that they can see but cannot touch. I still remember the first time I rode one of those shiny trains through a small city station. The station looked like a spaceship. Glass, steel, and a lobby so huge you can park an airplane in it. But the platform? Empty. The shops? Closed. The only thing moving was the security guard. And I asked a local taxi driver, why is nobody here? And he told me bluntly, the ticket's still too expensive. And bus is much cheaper. And you know what? The bus stops where people actually live. And here's where the fairy tale gets dark. Building these rails wasn't just concrete and steel. It was blood and debt. Local governments mortgaged decades of future revenue. Land sales, loans, shady bonds, you name it. Now, local governments are going broke as a result of the collapse in land sales. So hospitals cannot pay doctors. Teachers' salaries are delayed. Road repairs frozen. Yet the ghost stations still drain millions in upkeep every year. The kicker? The officials who pushed these projects. Oh, they're still fine. Transferred, promoted. The bill, it's dumped on ordinary people through higher utility fees, medical costs, tuition. The train stopped, but the debt didn't. The station's like a vampire, sucking local taxpayers dry in silence. And by the end of 2024, total railway debt hit 6.1 trillion yuan, growing 8% a year. It's a financial bullet train to the cliff. Now, you might ask, why keep building if they knew it wouldn't work? Simple. In China, economic projects aren't about economic profits. They're about politics. The metric isn't ridership. It's about the speed of construction, the size of the investment, and the size of the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Profit? Who cares? As long as the photo op looks good, the debt can be someone else's problem. And that is the magic trick of authoritarian economics. Take any industry, solar panels, shipbuilding, EVs, high-speed rail, pump it to the moon, and then crash it back to the earth, and then repeat the cycle. Take Ningxia in Gansu, the last county-level city to get HSR in late 2024. Less than a year later, suspension because of lack of passenger flow. And Ningxia isn't an outlier, it's a symptom. Across dozens of small cities, you see the same pattern. Stations built like palaces and budget lines bleeding red. Shops close, property values sink, vacant apartments that never found real residents. And when a line reduces service or shuts down, the local economy contracts further. Retail sinks, unemployment rises, and the tax base shrinks. Several of those affected cities saw GDP decline north of 5% in the first half of this year. That is not a hiccup. That is a choke. Now, let's talk about some numbers without putting you to sleep. A 200-kilometer HSR line can cost 20 plus billion yuan. Local governments often shoulder part of that, plus the stations, new roads, and the supporting infrastructure. When ridership flops, the debt service doesn't care. Interest still wants lunch and dinner. So how do cities pay? Sell more land. Except land sales are collapsing. Borrow more. Except creditors now want, cash flow. Cut services and delay salaries. Except citizens notice and get angry. In other words, the fiscal rope tightens and the basic governance gets strangled. And here's the scary part. Beijing doesn't even admit failure. No one says bankrupt. Instead, you get a bunch of euphemisms like optimization, passenger flow adjustment. Media reports that call a spade gets deleted in China. And the problem with this denial isn't just moral. It's expensive. If you never admit what went wrong, you can't fix the blueprint, and you just rename the next mistake. So we get a parade of new slogans with old DNA. Low altitude economy, smart cities, etc. Same playbook. Big hype, big debt, bigger crash. Now, don't get me wrong. I think high-speed rail can be great when it connects dense, prosperous regions with willing paying riders. But the Shanghai-Beijing logic doesn't copy-paste to a county where a monthly paycheck barely covers rent and food. The lesson isn't, oh, HSR is bad. The lesson is political mega projects built on wishful demand forecasting are bad. When you prioritize ribbon cuttings over economic returns, you don't build prosperity. You build monuments to misallocation. And you settle the smallest, poorest cities with the heaviest, longest lasting bills. Behind every empty station is 100 small tragedies. The noodle shop owner who signed a 5-year lease in a new district that never filled. The teacher whose paycheck arrives 2 months late, now he's behind on mortgages. The 22-year-old who buys a one-way ticket out because staying there means no future. I've talked to those people, and their stories don't trend on Chinese state TV. But they are the real scoreboard. The scoreboard that says the model that traded speed for sustainability has run out of track. Now, what happens next? If the HSR bubble was the fiscal bomb of the last decade, the next explosions are being wired right now under a whole bunch of trendy names. And unless you switch from political metrics to economic ones, from how big and how fast to who actually pays and why, you're not really planning smart. You are gambling with public money. High-speed rail was supposed to shrink distances. Instead, it widens the gap between China's fantasy and its reality, between promises and paychecks, between propaganda and people's lives. China built the world's fastest trains, but the problem is they're racing straight into the financial abyss.